You think you know Solomon, the wisest king in the Bible, right? But what if I told you there's a dark side to his story that few people dare to talk about? A king so powerful, so blessed, yet ultimately ruined by his own choices. This isn't just the tale of a man who had it all, wealth, power, and wisdom, but how he tragically lost everything. And here's the shocker. Solomon's downfall is more devastating than you've ever imagined. In this video, you're going to uncover how the wisest king in history spiraled into ruin, and the fatal mistakes that changed the course of his life and his kingdom. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Those same mistakes that destroyed Solomon could be lurking in our own lives today. And most people don't even realize it, but you will. And by watching until the end, something truly surprising will be revealed. Something that could change the way you think about wisdom, success, and even your own decisions. So stick around, because this story could be the key you've been missing. Not just to understanding Solomon, but to understanding yourself. Solomon was the king whose wisdom was known far and wide, making him a figure of awe and reverence throughout the ancient world. People sought his advice, and his decisions were often considered final and absolute. But wisdom isn't just about knowing things. It's about how you apply what you know. Think about a time when you had a tough decision to make, like choosing a career path or handling a conflict at work. Solomon knew that in every situation, the right solution came from a place of thoughtfulness and balance. In today's world, people might say, take time to think things through. But Solomon embodied that concept long before it was fashionable. Power, on the other hand, often comes with responsibility. And Solomon was no exception. He ruled over one of the wealthiest and most powerful kingdoms of his time. But with great power comes great challenges. The temptation to use that power for selfish reasons can easily creep in. Picture a successful entrepreneur today who has built a thriving business. If they lose sight of their core values, they risk everything. Solomon, as wise as he was, had to constantly check his own ambitions, realizing that his power was a gift from God to serve others, not himself. Yet the strength of Solomon's wisdom allowed him to expand Israel's borders and create a period of peace and prosperity unlike any before. Just like a modern CEO who leverages knowledge to grow a company, Solomon used his insights to build alliances, secure resources, and manage a diverse population. His wisdom became the foundation for a golden era in Israel's history, a time when the nation flourished. But as history often shows, with every golden age comes a set of unseen problems waiting to unravel everything. However, Solomon's reign wasn't just about political and economic gains. His wisdom extended into daily life, offering practical solutions to complex social issues. Think about how you handle conflicts in your own relationships, whether it's with friends, family, or colleagues. Solomon once resolved a dispute between two women claiming to be the mother of the same child. His solution? A test of compassion that revealed the true mother. It's a reminder that sometimes, true wisdom lies in understanding human nature more than just applying rules. Even so, Solomon's wisdom and power began to falter under the weight of personal desires. With each success, his reliance on divine guidance started to fade. It's like that moment when someone achieves so much that they begin to believe they don't need anyone else's input. You've probably seen this play out in today's world. Someone climbing the ladder of success only to lose their footing because they ignored the fundamentals. Solomon's eventual downfall would teach him and his people a harsh lesson. His relationships with other nations flourished, but his wisdom couldn't shield him from the weaknesses of his heart. The wealth and alliances he created with foreign kings also opened the door to influences that began to chip away at his faith. It's similar to a person who spends years building a strong financial portfolio only to see it crumble when poor investments or decisions are made. Solomon's wealth was vast, but what he gained in material prosperity, he began to lose in spiritual strength. In today's world, we admire leaders who seem to have it all: power, influence, and success. But the story of Solomon shows us that no matter how much someone has, there's always something deeper at stake. The Bible reminds us that wisdom is a gift, but maintaining it requires constant vigilance. It's like managing a business or even personal finances. If you take your eye off the long-term goals, short-term distractions can lead to ruin. Solomon's wisdom teaches that true leadership is not about accumulating wealth, but using knowledge to benefit others. As Solomon's story unfolds, His once steady path began to show cracks, revealing that even the wisest among us can lose sight of what truly matters. His tale, while filled with grandeur, serves as a cautionary reminder that the pursuit of wisdom must always be rooted in faith and humility. Despite his unparalleled wisdom and vast power, Solomon had a fatal flaw: his weakness for foreign women. His desire for diplomatic alliances led him to marry women from various nations, resulting in a harem of 700 wives and 300 concubines. On the surface, these marriages were strategic, meant to secure Israel's political strength. But in reality, they introduced a more dangerous element into Solomon's life. It's a bit like those decisions we make that seem harmless at first, but gradually lead us down a path we never intended. Have you ever taken on a small habit, thinking it wouldn't have much of an impact, only to realize later that it changed things in a major way? These foreign women brought their gods and cultural practices with them, slowly pulling Solomon away from his pure devotion to the God of Israel. Imagine someone who begins their career with strong values and a clear moral compass. Over time, if they surround themselves with influences that don't align with those values, it becomes harder and harder to stay on track. That's what happened to Solomon. His once firm foundation began to crumble as he allowed these foreign beliefs to take root in his heart. Solomon's weakness didn't just affect him personally, it impacted the entire kingdom. His choices set a dangerous precedent for Israel. As the king, his people looked to him for spiritual guidance, and when he strayed, they followed. It's not unlike when a leader in today's world makes a questionable choice, and suddenly, the entire organization or community is thrown into chaos. Solomon's divided heart led to a divided nation, and the consequences would be felt for generations. But there's a lesson here for all of us. Solomon's downfall wasn't immediate. It was a slow drift, one decision at a time, until he found himself far from where he started. Think about your own life. Are there small decisions you're making today that could lead you away from your goals or values in the future? Solomon's story teaches that vigilance is key. You can't afford to let little things slide, thinking they won't matter. Over time, those little things add up. His once solid faith began to fracture as he built altars for the foreign gods of his wives, gods like Ashtoreth and Milcom. It's like watching someone who once had a strong work ethic suddenly cut corners, thinking no one will notice. But eventually, those small cracks become too big to ignore. For Solomon, those cracks would lead to the greatest loss of all: God's favor. We can learn from Solomon that it's not enough to start strong. We have to finish strong, too. Interestingly, Solomon's weakness wasn't just about foreign women, it was about control. He wanted to have it all: power, wealth, wisdom, and love. But the more he tried to hold on to, the more he lost his grip. It's the same for many of us today. We try to juggle everything, thinking we can handle it all, but in the end, something has to give. Solomon's pursuit of more left him spiritually bankrupt, and eventually the cost of his weakness became too great to bear. As his heart grew divided, God sent warnings through prophets, urging Solomon to return to his faith. But Solomon, like so many of us, found it difficult to let go of the very things that were causing his downfall. It's a reminder that sometimes the hardest thing to do is to admit when we're wrong and change course. But the longer we hold on to what's wrong for us, the greater the price we pay. In the end, Solomon's weakness for foreign women and their gods wasn't just a personal failing. It was a national tragedy. His divided heart led to the division of Israel after his death, with the once united kingdom splitting into two. It's a powerful reminder that our personal choices often have far-reaching consequences. What we tolerate in our lives today can shape the future for those who come after us. Solomon's most monumental achievement was the construction of the Temple in Jerusalem, a sacred space that would house the Ark of the Covenant and symbolize the heart of Israel's faith. This wasn't just a building project. It was the culmination of years of planning and a testament to Solomon's vision as a king. Think of it like an architect today, designing a landmark that will define a city for centuries. The temple was to be more than stone and gold. It represented a place where God would dwell among his people. It's like the difference between building a house and creating a home. One is a structure, the other is a sanctuary. To build the temple, Solomon formed an alliance with Hiram, the king of Tyre, who supplied cedar wood, skilled craftsmen, and other essential materials. This alliance wasn't merely political, it was strategic. demonstrating Solomon's ability to unite different kingdoms for a common goal. It's like how modern leaders form international partnerships to build something bigger than what one nation could achieve alone. Solomon understood that leadership is not about doing everything yourself. It's about recognizing where others can add value and working together for the greater good. The construction took 7 years, and every detail was meticulously planned. The temple was adorned with gold, fine linens, and intricate carvings, showcasing Israel's wealth and devotion. In today's terms, it's like a company investing heavily in its headquarters to reflect its brand and values. The temple was Israel's declaration to the world that they were a nation under God, blessed with wisdom and prosperity. But as we'll see, even the grandest achievements can't protect you from the consequences of personal choices. Solomon didn't stop with the temple, though. He also built a magnificent palace for himself, a project that took 13 years to complete, almost twice as long as the temple. This palace was a symbol of Solomon's personal wealth and power, and while it was grand, it also showed a shift in his priorities. Imagine someone who starts out passionate about a noble cause but gradually becomes more focused on their personal success. Solomon's palace, while impressive, was a sign that his focus was shifting from God's glory to his own. The contrast between the temple and the palace is a striking one. The temple was built for God, a place of worship and humility. The palace, on the other hand, was built for Solomon, a reflection of his growing desire for luxury and comfort. It's a bit like someone who once lived a simple life, but after achieving success becomes more interested in showing off their wealth than staying true to their roots. This shift in Solomon's priorities would soon have far-reaching effects. However, Solomon's achievements in construction were undeniable. The temple and palace were wonders of the ancient world, drawing visitors from far and wide. Even today, when people visit iconic buildings, they marvel at the vision and ingenuity it took to bring them to life. Solomon's legacy as a builder remains, but it's important to remember that buildings, no matter how grand, can't shield us from the consequences of our personal decisions. While the temple stood as a testament to Solomon's wisdom and dedication to God, the palace began to represent his growing attachment to worldly things. It's like when someone starts accumulating possessions, thinking they'll bring happiness, only to find that those things can't fill the deeper void. Solomon's palace, in all its grandeur, couldn't offer the spiritual peace that the temple was meant to symbolize. And as we'll see in the next part of his story, this attachment to the material world would lead Solomon down a dangerous path. The story of the temple and palace reminds us that while achievements are important, they must be balanced with our deeper values. Solomon's buildings were impressive, but they also reflected a shift in his heart, a shift that would eventually lead to his downfall. As we move forward, we'll see how this imbalance began to unravel everything Solomon had worked so hard to build. Now, before we dive into the next part of Solomon's story, I want to hear from you. If you were in his position, surrounded by so much power and wealth, do you think you could stay true to your beliefs? Drop a comment below. I'd love to know your thoughts. What would be the hardest choices for you to make? Let's chat in the comments. One of Solomon's most famous acts of wisdom was the judgment of the divided baby. This moment wasn't just about making a legal decision. It was a test of true compassion and insight into human nature. 2 women came to Solomon, each claiming to be the mother of the same baby. It was a case with no witnesses, no clear evidence, just 2 voices crying out for justice. Imagine being in a position where you have to solve a dispute that seems impossible to unravel. Solomon, in his wisdom, knew that the truth wasn't always in the facts, but in the heart. Solomon's solution was shocking, even by today's standards. He called for a sword to divide the baby in 2, offering half to each woman. It wasn't cruelty, it was a brilliant psychological move. The true mother, filled with love and sacrifice, immediately pleaded for the baby's life, willing to give him up rather than see him harmed. It's like those moments when someone's true character is revealed under pressure. The other woman, indifferent, agreed to the division, exposing her lack of maternal instinct. Solomon's wisdom wasn't just in the decision, it was in understanding the lengths to which love would go to protect. This judgment established Solomon's reputation as a king who could see beyond the surface, who understood the deeper layers of human behavior. Today, leaders in business, law, or even family dynamics can take a lesson from Solomon here. When faced with tough decisions, the answer might not always lie in the obvious solution. Sometimes, you need to create a situation where people's true intentions are revealed. Think about a time when you had to make a tough call. Did you look beyond what was being said to understand what was really at stake? Solomon's judgment teaches us the value of wisdom over knowledge. You can have all the information in the world, but if you don't understand how to use it, it's useless. Solomon didn't need facts or figures to make his decision. He needed insight into the human heart. It's a bit like how, in relationships, what someone says might not always match what they truly feel. Wisdom comes in knowing how to read between the lines, to see what's unspoken but deeply felt. This case wasn't just about a baby, it was about justice, compassion, and understanding human motives. Solomon could have easily ruled based on a quick judgment, but instead, he chose to dig deeper, to find the truth where it was hidden. It's a reminder to all of us that when we face conflicts, whether in the workplace, at home, or in our communities, we need to take a step back and consider what's really going on. What motivates the people involved? What are they truly fighting for? For Solomon, this judgment became a defining moment in his reign. His people now saw him not just as a ruler, but as a wise king who could navigate even the most challenging situations with grace and insight. It's like how a leader in today's world earns respect, not just through decisions, but through the thoughtfulness and care they bring to solving problems. People don't just want solutions, they want to know that their leaders understand them. This story also illustrates the balance between justice and mercy, a balance that every great leader must learn to strike. Solomon didn't need to harm the child to reach a verdict, but his method revealed the truth. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes, the best way to find justice is to understand where mercy lies. In your own life, think about the conflicts you faced. Did you seek justice through force? Or did you find a way to reveal the truth through patience and understanding? As Solomon's reputation for wisdom grew, so did his kingdom's prosperity. But with each act of brilliance, there also came greater responsibility and the need to stay grounded. As we move forward in his story, we'll see how the weight of leadership and the temptations of power began to take their toll on even the wisest king. Despite Solomon's wisdom and achievements, his reign took a dark turn when he began to lose control over his heart and his kingdom. His deep involvement with foreign gods and idols, brought in by his many wives, began to take a toll. God had been clear from the beginning. Solomon was chosen to lead Israel as a king who followed his commandments. But as Solomon's heart drifted further from God, so did his control over the kingdom. It's similar to how a leader today can lose focus and start making decisions that go against the very values they once stood for. The cracks were forming, and they wouldn't stay hidden for long. God, in his mercy, sent warnings to Solomon, reminding him of the covenant they had made. These warnings weren't just about Solomon's personal life, they were a sign of the kingdom's future. It's like when you receive advice from someone who cares deeply about your well-being. At first, the warnings might seem minor, but if ignored, the consequences can become severe. For Solomon, the warnings were clear. If he continued down this path, the kingdom would be torn from his hands. Solomon's refusal to heed these warnings showed the growing distance between him and the God who had once granted him unparalleled wisdom. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew something was wrong but kept going, thinking you could manage it on your own? That's where Solomon found himself. The very wisdom that had brought him success was now clouded by his desire for power and acceptance from those around him. It's a lesson for all of us. No matter how wise or successful we become, we must remain connected to our core values, or we risk losing everything. The prophet Ahijah delivered a particularly harsh warning. The kingdom would be divided after Solomon's death. 10 of the 12 tribes of Israel would be taken away and given to Jeroboam, a servant of Solomon. Imagine being in Solomon's shoes, knowing that your legacy, which had once seemed so secure, was now crumbling. It's like building a successful business only to realize that the foundation is flawed, and everything you've worked for is at risk. Solomon's empire, built on wisdom and strength, was now fragile, teetering on the edge of collapse. But the divine warning wasn't without hope. God promised that he wouldn't completely strip the kingdom from Solomon's family. One tribe, Judah, would remain with his descendants. For the sake of David, Solomon's father, and Jerusalem. It's like receiving a second chance even when everything seems lost. God's grace is always present, even in moments of judgment, offering a way forward if we're willing to change course. But for Solomon, this wasn't just about losing power. It was about losing the very heart of what he had been called to do. As the years went on, Solomon's grip on the kingdom weakened. The foreign gods he had once tolerated now held more influence than he ever intended. It's a bit like someone who slowly lets bad habits take over, thinking they can quit at any time, only to find themselves trapped. Solomon's loss of control wasn't just political, it was spiritual. His heart, once dedicated to God, was now divided, and the consequences were becoming clear. The people of Israel began to feel the effects of Solomon's divided heart. Discontent spread as the nation's spiritual and political unity started to fracture. It's a reminder that when leaders lose their way, the impact isn't just personal, it affects everyone around them. Whether in business, family, or community, the choices of those in charge ripple outward, influencing the lives of many. For Solomon, the divine warning was not just about his own downfall, but the future of Israel itself. As we move forward, we'll see how this loss of control, both in his personal faith and his kingdom, would eventually lead to the division of Israel. Despite all his wisdom, Solomon couldn't escape the consequences of turning away from the very source of that wisdom, God. And while he may have believed that his reign would last forever, the seeds of division were already sown, waiting to sprout after his death. Beyond being a king of immense power and wealth, Solomon left behind a legacy of wisdom through his writings, which continue to inspire millions to this day. His authorship of Proverbs on Ecclesiastes and the Song of Songs speaks to the depth of his understanding of life, human nature, and the pursuit of meaning. These books are not just historical texts, they're blueprints for navigating the complexities of existence. It's like finding an old journal from someone who has lived through it all, offering timeless advice on how to live wisely, make decisions, and understand the ebb and flow of life's seasons. The Book of Proverbs, with its short, punchy sayings, is like a modern self-help guide filled with practical wisdom. Solomon wrote about everyday life, how to be a good friend, how to work hard, and even how to avoid falling into traps of foolish behavior. Have you ever read a quote that hits you right between the eyes, making you realize you've been approaching a situation all wrong? That's the power of Proverbs. It's the kind of wisdom that you can apply instantly, whether you're dealing with personal relationships or making tough decisions at work. Ecclesiastes, on the other hand, reveals a different side of Solomon. Here, we see a man who has experienced the heights of success and power but finds himself asking, what's the point? It's a book that wrestles with the vanity of life, how everything we chase after can feel empty if we lose sight of what truly matters. In today's world, it's like someone who's built a successful career but feels unfulfilled, wondering if there's more to life than material success. Solomon's reflections in Ecclesiastes remind us that without a deeper connection to purpose, all our achievements are fleeting. Then there's the Song of Songs, a poetic exploration of love and desire. This book is a celebration of the beauty and complexity of romantic relationships, but it also points to a deeper spiritual longing. It's like a love song that speaks not only to the heart but to the soul. Solomon's writings here show that wisdom isn't just about the mind. It's about understanding the emotional and spiritual dimensions of life. In many ways, it's a reminder that love, in all its forms, is central to the human experience. These literary works were not just written for Solomon's time. They're as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. In Proverbs years, you'll find advice on money management, personal integrity, and even leadership, concepts that are crucial in modern life. Ecclesiastes, with its existential questions, challenges us to think deeply about our priorities. And Song of Songs, it encourages us to value love in its truest form, whether romantic or divine. Solomon's writings bridge the gap between ancient wisdom and contemporary life, offering insights that anyone can use. But there's something deeper in these books, an undercurrent of struggle. Even though Solomon wrote with wisdom, his life was marked by contradictions. He had knowledge of what was right, but his actions didn't always align. Have you ever known what you should do but found it hard to follow through? Solomon's life and writings show us that wisdom doesn't guarantee perfection. It's a reminder that we are all works in progress, Constantly learning and evolving, Solomon's literary legacy also reflects his internal battles. Proverbs shows his ideals, Ecclesiastes his disillusionment, and Song of Songs his passion. Together, they paint a picture of a man who, despite his wisdom, struggled with the same questions we all face. What is the meaning of life? How do we find love and purpose? What makes life worth living? Solomon's writings invite us into those struggles, not offering easy answers, but rather encouraging us to seek wisdom in our own lives. As we continue to look at Solomon's story, we'll see how these writings weren't just reflections of his thoughts. They were windows into his soul. His wisdom came from experience, both good and bad. And while his writings remain timeless, his life serves as a cautionary tale. Even the wisest king in the Bible could not escape the consequences of his choices. As you've seen, the story of Solomon is filled with highs and lows, wisdom and folly, triumphs and downfalls. His life teaches us that even the wisest among us can stray, and the consequences of our choices often reach far beyond what we imagine. Now, think about your own life. Are there areas where you've started to compromise, like Solomon did? What choices are you making today that could shape your future in unexpected ways? Solomon's story serves as a powerful reminder that wisdom isn't just about knowing what's right. It's about consistently living by those truths, even when it's difficult. So, what will you do with the wisdom you've gained? Will you apply it to your life? Or will you let distractions pull you away from your path? If Solomon's fall teaches us anything, it's that we must remain vigilant, always checking our hearts and priorities. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of the upcoming stories that can transform the way you see life. Also, take a moment to check out the video that's appearing on your screen right now. It dives even deeper into the powerful lessons from the Bible that you won't want to miss. Click on it and let's continue this journey together.